Hello and welcome to another episode of Our Own Devices with Nandagopal Rajan. No prizes for guessing that this is me again, Nandagopal Rajan, in front of you. But on the other side, we have another guest, as always. I think that's the promise of our podcast is that we'll get you a guest who's going to tell you something new and you're going to learn something. And this time we have Guru Bhatt from PayPal. He is a vice president of the customer success platform at PayPal. He's joining us from Bangalore. Mr. Bhatt, welcome on the show.
Thank you very much, Nandagopal. Very a great pleasure to be here, and my best wishes to all your readers and listeners as well.
Yes, sir. The pleasure is entirely mine. Actually, I'll start with a small anecdote. I was traveling for the past, 4 5 days in different parts of the country, and I realized that I came back from the trip with exactly the same amount of cash that I'd started the trip with, because you literally don't spend cash anymore, because we have gone completely digital. So if you look at it in different way, uh, the pandemic, for all the negativity that and the issues and the troubles that it brought into our lives, it was sort of a perfect storm when you come and look at it from a digital payments perspective. What is your take on that?
No, I think we're all blessed to live in times that are truly transformational, right? As history has evolved, I think human beings are tempted into thinking that things have never been as dramatic as they are during their own lifetimes. We frequently look at the lives led by our parents and their parents, etc., and look at them and say, "Oh my God, those were such simple times. We live in very complicated times." But the truth of the matter is, things will never be as slow as they are today. Things will only get faster and faster, and change is on an ever accelerating trend, right? And so the pandemic has actually accelerated a few trends that have led to the overall digitization of several aspects of human life, including the way we are interacting today, which would have been inconceivable a few years ago. In all likelihood, we would be doing this face to face in your office or in my office with a whole bunch of recording equipment,
Yeah,
etc. And here we are today, just staring at each other's laptops and interacting in a way that seems so natural today, but would have been considered completely
yes,
abnormal a few years ago.
absolutely.
And payment is one such. Commerce is a human need. The ability to buy things that you want, that you desire, that you need, has always been a huge element of human life, regardless of which culture you belong to, which part of the world you belong to. And the friction inherent in that process is dramatically being reduced thanks to digitization, which is why you rarely transact with physical cash anymore. You go to a store, there is a plethora of technology through which you can tap and scan and wave and do all sorts of things and pay. And rarely it includes unfolding a bill, handing it over to somebody, getting the change, calculating whether the change is correct or not, etc., etc. Those days, I think, are firmly behind us.
If you talk about digital payments, online payments, PayPal has been a name that's been there, literally from the start, right? That's something we have all known over a long period of time. So, is that is that position something that gives you a larger context on what's happening now? Because you would have seen so many of these events happening in the journey of the payment cycle, right? So have you seen some things that happened in the past couple of years which sort of like created a sweet spot for payments to sort of get to the next level?
Absolutely. So I think our mission has always been to democratize access to financial services. And what started as a simple premise that payments between entities, whether it is people to people or whether it is between a person and a business, should be easy, should be natural and intuitive, and should perhaps be driven with something as simple as an email address. That's where PayPal began. Its roots were, back in the late 90s, when PayPal started as a company, was to make this cumbersome process of online payments far more seamless. uh, End of the day, I think, human beings are, and the processes that human beings engage in are always going to be disproportionately incentivized towards simplicity as time goes on, because over a period of time we tend to focus on things, make it super complex, and then any breakthrough idea is usually the one that simplifies the clutter and makes it supremely easy for people. Now, during the pandemic, naturally, there were constraints that were put into the system. You cannot go out of your house. You do not want to touch anything physically. Even a door handle was, in some sense, fraught with danger, right? Like we were all carrying around gallons of disinfectant with us and sanitizers with us. And at that point, a physical note or a coin which has passed through multiple hands, been God knows where, is not one that you're going to find very appetizing to touch. So, any system that gives you an escape from that is one that you will embrace. And here you have digital payments, sort of ready for the moment, if you will, with QR codes, especially in the Asia Pacific region. This has been uh, pretty prevalent for a while. I would say it's not like it's a breakthrough technology or anything. It's been there for a while, but this pandemic coming into force just gave it that next level of a fillip that took it to the next level. Right now, you can't walk around on a street without seeing a QR code with a coconut seller or a flower vendor or anything, right? A vegetable cart owner, everybody has QR codes, and it seems so natural to whip out your phone and just scan it and see money move within seconds between you and the other person. Now, this need for simplicity, I think, has always existed right from the time PayPal was founded. We have seen multiple iterations of a move towards the simplicity. Within our own experiences, we have constantly iterated our product experiences to make it simpler and simpler. For example, a few years ago, we launched what is called One Touch, where it was a seamless way for you to land on a website and with just one click buy something. That was a move towards simplicity. And so, is it a pattern we have seen before? Absolutely yes. And do most patterns evolve during a time of great disruption? Yes. I mean, the necessity is the mother of all invention, and in this case, the pandemic imposed some necessities on us that were very hard to ignore.
Of all sectors, I guess banking and anything to do with payments would have been the most difficult to simplify, right? Because this is a segment where security and protecting the bank and your money is something that comes naturally. So is it difficult? Is it even more difficult to simplify things here? Because you have to start thinking like a customer, right? How will the customer? What are the issues a customer will have? While trying to pay. So is it even more difficult for a banking led kind of a segment to think like that?
If you look at, what is, let me peel the onion a little on what makes this difficult or challenging or even interesting in some sense, right? By definition, and for very good reasons, banking tends to be a highly regulated field because money is a very emotive issue. People lead lives struggling to make money, struggling to manage money, having dreams and aspirations around what they will do with that money, thinking about how much they will leave and how their descendants will use that money. Obviously, money forms such a huge part of the mind space of any human being's life. And so necessarily, in different parts of the world, governments have to pay huge attention to regulation when it comes to the management of money, the movement of money, how payment systems are built, what kind of power payment players will wield in all aspects of this chain. And all of this, you go right from the aspect of cash to digital payments to investments to everything. You've got regulation that spans the entire sector, right? That's and every country has, groups of countries in some cases have evolved regulation that suit their citizens needs, and that is absolutely valid. Now, a tech company that wants to be a global player will find that it is super hard to actually be compliant with all regulation all over the place. It takes time, which is why for PayPal, we've been in this business for such a long time. That is one element of our business where we truly have a lot of pride in how we have built it. We have built our regulatory compliance systems as platforms that can accommodate not just changes to regulation, but can also accommodate new countries that we turn on in terms of capabilities, with the regulation tailored to that, and compliance tailored to those countries. And compliance again is a evolving field. Countries pass new regulation all the time. which are in the interests of their citizens as they rightfully should be. So these are things that are super difficult to do. And if you look at what happens with startups, right, there's a huge amount of excitement around the technology capabilities that a startup brings, as well as the innovation that they may bring about in customer experience, etc. Very valid, very good ideas that come through. But where the rubber hits the road is compliance, regulatory compliance, security, as you called out. Super important. These are aspects that are non-trivial to solve and absolutely must be solved. There's no way around it. You cannot have a system where you shrug your shoulders and say, hey, you know what, it's a best effort security, we tried our best but you lost your money. No customer is going to stand for that. And that's where PayPal, I would say, puts a lot of its energy, because that's the core crux of the problem to solve.
So, staying on the same topic, you also saw this spike in users, because of the pandemic and the lockdown, which also meant that you had to secure things at scale, right? You were maybe being exposed to new use cases of what could go wrong, because you had maybe people who were trying to do things for the first time, and especially in a market like India, not very digital savvy, figuring out some things, maybe getting scammed. So how do you, how important is it to actually be ahead of the game in a situation like this, and could you actually manage that, because because the lockdowns literally happened overnight in most parts of the world?
So if you look at how we build our systems for scale, right, there is a certain seasonality in the trends around payments. So, for example, in the US market, Thanksgiving, which is sometime in November, ends up
Yeah.
being pretty much the day with the most number of transactions, or it could be Cyber Monday, which is right
Yeah.
after
Or Black Friday.
Thanksgiving. Right, that entire period is huge. So our systems were always typically built to handle that kind of scale, which in a average part of the year does not, you don't see those volumes you on a month by month, but during those months you do. But you can't you can't prepare only for the optimistic case. You have to prepare for the worst case. So our systems were always geared for higher scale than we see on an average day. So when the pandemic actually started to take hold and people started to transact online in dramatic fashion, we started to see days, for a couple of quarters, where every single day 250,000 new customers were joining our platform. Think about it, every 4 days a million new people that you add to your platform. That was the kind of acceleration in people joining the PayPal ecosystem, as well as transacting more in terms of not just the number of transactions but the value of each transaction. Everything was going up. So our systems were luckily built, fortunately, in a way that could accommodate the scale. And we made several investments in terms of our strategy around the public cloud, scaling systems, etc., in order to accommodate even more growth. Assuming that we were going to continue to grow like this, and those paid off rich dividends. I mean, the last few years, for example, now we transact about 1.3 trillion dollars in a 12-month period on PayPal systems, and that is growing rapidly and dramatically. The number of customers, we are at nearly 450 million customers, roughly 430 million, give or take, customers use PayPal actively, and that is, again, and the number of times they use PayPal has also gone up. So the scale at which we operate definitely is one element of our business where we have had to invest significantly in technology. And the security that you talked about, I think people like you play a huge role in making the world safer. And the reason is, no matter how good technology is, the weak link in some sense is a human being who's going to be using that technology. Social engineering attacks, phishing, smishing, a variety of new techniques that scammers continuously evolve, right? Like, technology doesn't just help the good guys, it helps the bad guys get smarter at defrauding people as well. So it's a combination of using technology to enhance the security of the system, but also well-meaning, well-intentioned players like you in the media, who do their part in educating our customers and making sure that they also do their part to keep themselves safe, right? It's very important. And so I thank you and your colleagues in the journalistic profession for doing this. It's an extremely important part of the picture.
As things get better, are you seeing that the spike that you were on, or the number of users who were doing digital payments, is that coming back, or or do you think this is going to stay because people have now been exposed, are now happy, not that concerned about, like, I guess before that a lot of people were holding off because they did not know what it was, they were like skeptical. But now, since almost everybody has been exposed to digital payments in one way or the other, do you think a lot more people will continue using this as their primary means of payment?
Some of the trends are definitely secular, right? So there are two elements to this. One is the rate of growth at which we saw the pandemic kind of giving a boost to the growth in digital payments. Now that rate of growth is going to start slowing because the immediacy of the need is now slowly starting to come down, right? So if somebody had never done digital transactions until now, are they going to find the same pressure to do digital transactions? Perhaps not. That pandemic driven impulse is no longer there to push them into it, right? So the rate of growth is going to slow, but the growth is still going to continue. That there's no doubt of. Now the trends around digital payments are extremely secular. So if you look at purchases that you do on a daily basis in India, for example, right? Like you go out, you buy milk, you buy yogurt, you buy your groceries, you buy vegetables. You've gotten used to the convenience of just whipping out your phone from your pocket and using a QR code to pay. I don't think anybody goes and says, "Hey, you know what? I really enjoyed the inconvenience of having to carry around cash. Let me go back to it when I have a perfectly good and better alternative with digital payments." So people are going to continue with that because it's easy, it's seamless, it goes about. Now on e-commerce, maybe in some cases people love the experience of going to a shop. They love the experience of touching and feeling material that they want to buy for clothing, for example, or looking at how a set of plates looks in out of the box in a store, and then buying rather than just buying something online. Maybe there are some people who prefer that experience, who will go back to those experiences, certainly. And so in that case, the certain purchases that had forcibly gone online may now start going back to store because people enjoy those experiences. But for a large majority of people, I think these kinds of in-store physical experiences, which were pretty much 100%, have now become 50% of what their daily life is. For most things, they prefer doing it online. More people order food online than going to a restaurant these days, right? And similarly, traffic, when the weather is bad, all of that, you're going to look at it as a headache, and you're just going to say, hey, there's an alternative. Why don't I do that, right? So as a result, while the rate of growth may slow compared to the during the peak of the pandemic, we are never going back to an age where 100% of transactions were done using cash.
So on the technology front, what are the things that you're most bullish about, in the payment space? Where do you think, technology is going to have the maximum impact, making things easier, better for users?
In general, Nandgopal, if you look at where the world is headed, right? Uh, so technology has a habit of democratizing the experience and making it seamless for a wide variety of consumers of that experience. Now, there is a certain magic that happens in a physical experience that you will have to try hard to replicate in a digital experience. For example, you go to a store, and let's say it's a store around the corner from where you live, and you've gone there for several generations. The person who owns the store knew your grandfather, you know the person, etc. The person recognizes you. They know your preferences. They know you have some automatic trust built with you, and the experience as a result becomes one that is enriched with trust and personalization. Now, you need to transmit this to the digital realm, and the only way to do that is through data. So, the use of AI and ML and the data trails that every person leaves behind as they interact with various entities in the internet has to be combined in a very empathetic and sensitive way, where it doesn't come across as creepy or infringing on your privacy in some sense, but at the same time makes you feel cared for and really well taken care of, right? That is going to be a determinant of great user experience. So as we move into the future, personalization is going to be hyper personalization, hyper localization. These are aspects that are going to be very critical to making not just payments but the overall commerce experience significantly more enjoyable for more people. Because I think as humans we are tuned to this, right? We see convenience, we use it, and then we need more than just that. Suddenly what used to be delightful becomes the new baseline, and you need a new delightful experience, and that falls into the realm of personalization. And so I see personalization, AI and ML, the use of big data as significant enablers. Now, the other technologies, for example, local processing, using cloud heavily as part of the technology footprint, bringing down latencies, significant hardening of the infrastructure to for payments to happen seamlessly, online offline seamlessness, being able to buy online and return in store, or buy online and pick up in store, all those various combinations of things where you can do things in a hybrid model, not just physical or online but both. Those are going to be very key to making sure that payments can succeed in the long run.
So one last thing before we wind up, as a company that has visibility across the world, uh, how do you think the India market is different, if at all? Are you seeing something special happening in the Indian market, especially with things like UPI?
Absolutely no. The Indian market, I would say, is very advanced compared to many other, significantly more developed, quote unquote, countries in the world. Right? I would say maybe China started even earlier than us when it comes to the digitization of commerce and payments, specifically. But India is not too far behind. Right? So the propensity for the country to leapfrog technology through generations through innovation is very high. I think people are very change friendly in India. This may be paradoxical, right? Like it may be an ancient culture that is somewhat has the tag of being resistant to change, but I think otherwise. I think India is a very change friendly country. So anything that improves the lives of people very quickly adopt it, and digital payments is one great example. And huge kudos to the regulatory systems and the government for having actively pushed digital payments heavily in the country, because it's made a tremendous difference to the lives of ordinary citizens. I mean, imagine what a pain it would have been for small and medium sized businesses, vendors on the streets, to actually make a livelihood and manage things if cash flow was a problem. But thanks to digital payments, at least things ran smoothly. So I think India, in that sense, is a little more ahead of the game. Things like NEFT, the IMPS, these systems, the speed at which they move money around. Actually, we are better than many other countries in the world. So for PayPal, it's we look at India as a model that a lot of other countries can also learn from, especially with UPI and faster payments. Now, as the other thing that is important to note is India is also a extremely cost conscious and cost
Yeah.
sensitive market. So there has been a steady diet of cashbacks and incentives that have fueled people's buying behaviors, which over time will have to start smoothening out, because it's not an endless pot that you can keep dipping into, because viable businesses aren't built on the basis of losing money. Viable businesses are built on the basis of making money, right? And satisfying all stakeholders, including their shareholders, but also the communities that they serve. So I think this habituation to cashbacks and incentives may be again a uniquely Indian trait, because of the way the last maybe 10 years or so have played out with the startup ecosystem here. But I think all of those are maturing, and there are signs of rapid maturation in various parts segments of the market. And we will see in the next couple of years, there will be winners and losers, and the winners will be there for the long haul, and they will really reshape the way commerce is conducted in India.
I'm sure that 4 rupee cashback you get after having made a 40,000 rupee online payment still kicks gives a kick to a lot of Indians. Uh,
That's right.
Thanks for being on the show. It is a insightful conversation. A lot of things that we really use a lot, but we don't understand. And I think digital payments is still in that realm. You're listening to Guru Bhatt from PayPal. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much, Nandagopal. It was a real pleasure. I had fun, and as you can tell, I can talk till the cows come home on
Yeah.
these topics. So, thanks for having me.
Thank you. You were listening to Our Own Devices. We'll be back again next week with another guest. Till then, we are available everywhere you listen to your pods.